Hey there, mucho gusto, and welcome to another episode of Detective Writer. I'm your host, Sally, aka Detective Writer, and today I am very excited to introduce all of you to a brand new guest, fellow author M.A.S. Thank you so much for being here, M.A.S. I love these acronyms, or M.A.S, but it's so incredible. Thank you so much for being here.
I appreciate you having me, Sally. And MAS is literally just short for my annoying senpai. So that's like just the abbreviation. Yeah.
I love that. And do you mind me asking you, MAS, what was the biggest motivation for you to become a writer? What was the moment that just clicked for you, saying that you had to become an author?
When my actual drawing career didn't hit off the way I wanted it to. So I initially started out as an artist. I'm still pretty decent, but it was really time consuming and definitely kind of frowned upon in regards to like my parents, in college. And that's when I took a creative writing course. And it was a weird situation where I would watch a lot of these shows and I would get inspired by like these like TV shows. I'm like, oh, like I felt like I knew what they were doing. And then part of me was like, well, why don't I take the time to like create something of my own and just take a backseat with the drawing and more on the writing. And then that's kind of how the whole thing just started rolling.
That's incredible. So, for you initially being an artist, and I remember you saying, that you love anime. Does your love for drawing and art really perspire through anime and stuff like that?
Yes, yes, absolutely. So it all started with anime. I feel like everyone kind of starts this way, but when you're younger, it literally starts with stick figures. I'm just a kid that stuck with it. So I stuck with stick figures and it kind of evolved. And I don't know how to describe it to people, but it's with the drawings and the writing, I feel like I can see all the scenes and cartoons in my head. So just kind of like getting it down on paper, essentially. But yeah, just do a lot of inspirations through that and, stuck with it. And at that point, I was like, hey, I do want to try to take my chances creating something of my own. So just through like a lot of inspiration through all means, not just anime, through, TV shows, novels I've read, concepts. So yeah.
Oh, that's incredible. And would you say that for you, your writing journey, how would you describe it so far? What would you say were the biggest challenges that you've seen, but as well as the beautiful like strengths or anything positives that you've noticed when it came to writing your stories?
For me, I think my biggest challenge, I mean, I'm still learning, so I'm far from like the perfect writer. But for me, my biggest challenge were just like I would say like the transitional scenes. And I kind of noticed that as I'm creating the comics, because me and my artist work on the story together, but as I write it and then I see it, it's very different with comics versus just words. Right. So it's like, oh wait, this needs, and you see it in shows too, this needs a transition, meaning like, hey, when you're going from one scene to the next scene, it just can't be like now they're in the coffee shop, now they're in the street. Like it needs to be some kind of, like scenery, then cut to the next scene, or put like a little abbreviation or box the next day later, some kind of transitions. I struggle with that in the beginning because I was so used to the drawing aspect where it's like boom, boom, boom. And I was like, oh wait, this doesn't make sense when you look at it because it's just kind of like fast scenes. I was like, oh, I gotta focus on the transition. But besides that, a lot of it has been really enjoyable. I mean, another thing I could think of that, maybe I struggle with a little bit, but I everything's on my phone. So and sometimes I do type, but it never feels like it's enough space. So I'm always like making little notes for myself and little like stickies, like, oh, this is a good idea. Or I see something, I was like, all right, I need to type this in the draft. Like just a whole bunch of notes for ideas and concepts that it never feels like it's enough space. Or after a while, I kind of have to find a place to like put all of these ideas in a section so that when I'm going back to maybe like actually write, so okay, I can reference back to that whole area versus just kind of stickies and ideas everywhere. So
That is so true. And that's actually a really great point to bring up, that you keep trying, you know, as an author, as a writer, you're definitely learning from your first draft throughout the whole writing process. And even if some of us may not think that we're the best writers, we're still pursuing our passions and we're finding new ways to like really work with it, really learning how to become writers. Because I find that it's super beautiful that when you're writing, you make new languages, you can make new cultures, new backgrounds, characters,
Yeah, yeah.
and it's sort of like traveling the world without ever leaving home, in my opinion. And that's one of the most beautiful things about writing. And that definitely brings me to ask you, MAS, for you, what would you say is the best thing that you found about becoming an author, whether it's finding it through drawing and art? What would you say is the most precious thing that you've noticed when it comes to writing?
That's a really interesting question. For me, I think it's just the thrill. I don't know, like because a lot of it is through motivation, like, hey, I've seen something that inspired me or heard something or read something that inspired me. But it's kind of like seeing it come together and it really exciting, it like as long as it excites you, um and you hope that that also excites the reader, you know? Um and almost viewing like, hey, like this is something that I would enjoy reading. So basing it off of, my own personal inspirations, the things that I'm like, all right, like what do I feel like is thrilling? What do I feel like can gauge somebody's interest? What do I feel like, and this is something I constantly try to push myself when it comes to my own writing and it excites me. Is like, all right, well, I don't want to be, you can't control it. Like I don't want to be predictable, but I want a story where it's like I saw something and that was inspiring. And it was one of those things where, well, if they had did this or if they had did that, that would have been so cool. Why don't I try to incorporate something similar or in a way where it's like, oh wow, like just that edge on your seat factor that you just don't see coming. So constantly just trying to create scenes that I feel like, when I'm reading it is thrilling and hope that like, hey, the reader feels the same way.
That's incredible, and thank you so much for sharing because that's really beautiful to point out, MAS, that you're basically bringing together a community. You're bringing together so many readers, to look at your work and to really gain something from it. Everybody can have a different message pertaining to it. And if you think about it, through our work, through our books, through our drawings, through our art, it's stuff that's going to outlive us for so many years to come. And so many future generations are going to be able to look at it and be able to like gain so much insight from it and really just like I don't know, maybe become like Shakespeare. Our work could outlive us for centuries or decades to come.
No, I mean, I definitely agree. I never want to think too deep into it. It's more so like, hey, like, cause that was like a fear initially. And I feel like it's probably a fear that a lot of writers have where it's like, well, how do I get started? Where do I start? And the cliche is like, well, just write something, write anything. But like I never want to view it as like a super serious pressure thing. It's something that I actually find relaxing, do in my spare time, and it just so happens I'm doing it quite often, so it works out. But, yeah, I just want it to be, despite the bigger picture of it, I just for myself, and I hope others too, just view it as like, "Hey, I hope it's something that you enjoy to do, and I hope that it enhances your life versus, like, feeling pressured or writer's block, like, I hope it brings inspiration, writing in itself, so
Exactly. Because through so many works of writing, I don't know if you could tell, MAS, that with writing, you can inspire so many people, but also for so many of us, who may not feel so comfortable to share what we're thinking, what we're feeling, writing in a way I believe can help bring so many people's voices to light. And,
1000%, yeah.
through journaling, through writing affirmations, some people like manifesting, some people love to pray. So I find that it's just so beautiful to see how with writing, it can work in so many different ways. It can be informative, it can be educational, it can scare the wits out of people.
Yeah.
It can be like, it can take so many different levels and reach so many different communities and genres. And it's just so beautiful to see the messages that can be brought about from it.
Yeah, no, I think you said something that I think that was really telling, it was like, if you wanted an opportunity to just tell your story and express yourself, I really do think writing is an excellent tool for that. Just no matter how others might feel about it, how do you feel after you've written it? Do you feel better about yourself? Do you feel relieved? Do you feel a sense of like, it's like, and I feel like that should be one of the main factors in regards to it. It could it just has so many positives in my opinion versus negatives.
Absolutely. And that's one of the most beautiful things that I can ever see about writing. It's just that it's just so beautiful. The impacts that it can definitely reach so many people, the genres, and the different types of, I guess the different messages that it can impact. And that actually brings me to ask you, MAS, when it comes to anime, what really inspires you, honestly, aside from, drawing and art? Have you, like, worked on your personal mangas? Are you putting out to the public? Like, I know that you have your whole book series and everything going there, no, but I would love to know, like, how does it work for you? Like, how does your inspiration come from anime and manga? Like, how does it pan out?
I mean, I have personal favorites. So in regards to anime and manga, I'm a huge fan of just psychological thrillers. So the shows that kind of get you at the edge of your seat. So for those who are familiar with, anime and manga, there's like Berserk, there's Death Note, there's Future Diary. So stories that have such unique premises. What Death Note is like, hey, you write somebody's name in a notebook and then shortly after, a few seconds after they die. Like these unique lores and tropes. Um, but honestly, kinda like what I said before, right? Like it doesn't just come from anime, but like I will like see or read or hear something, even like a quote. I have this habit of just writing down every kind of inspiration. It happens like a lot. I was like, oh wow, that's a dope line. I forgot where I heard it from. Can a V be backwards? And I was like, and I thought about it. I was like, I don't know. I don't think it can. Like it could be upside down, but it'll be still just unique things that may not be unique, but I just find myself like writing and jotting. And I was like, all right, I think I need to get going. And I'm like that, where it's like I'll hear something inspirational. It's like, all right, I could see this going somewhere. I could see a concept for this, and I'll write like a little thing on my phone, a little draft, a little paragraph. Um, so yeah, it comes from a lot of places, but my core really is it started with anime and it started with drawing, but I was more so geared towards these I won't say like darker stories, but again, kind of like ironically enough, almost like detective who did it kind of situations where you're trying to find out, you know, who's responsible, who could be stopped, or, you know, how do they break away from these boundaries in the story? It's a lot of stuff like that. I find myself watching a lot of I won't say I've always watched it, but um Harlan Coben, like a lot of his like stories. It's right, like, and I'll learn from that too, where it's like, okay, like I see like his setups, his structures, and I personally just get a lot of inspiration from that, even reading other people's stories. Or it's like, okay, like I see where they're going with this, I see what they did with that, and it just inspires me in these moments where, all right, like that's why I get like my sticky, or I do have a notebook where I just write down ideas. Like, all right, I gotta like, if I don't do this now, I'm gonna eat and forget. So I gotta like write this down now or type this now. Cause then when I reference back to like actually dedicating time to write, it feels so easy because it's not like at least like avoiding writer's block. I have so many just general ideas despite how ridiculous it is. Can a V be backwards kind of thing? It's like, oh yeah, like, a whole bunch of concepts like that. So
That's absolutely incredible, and I'm so happy that you brought up psychological thrillers and detective stuff because that is literally my jam. I love murder mystery, the suspense of it, like leaving readers at the edge of their seat, wanting to know what finds out and what's gonna happen next, like the dun 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 effect. That's one of the
yeah,
most
yeah.
amazing things that I love. And I love to ask you, MAS, for you, how does your writing journey look like? Is there a certain coffee, tea brand that you drink? Is there a certain time that you usually like to write? Is there usually like, in front of the ocean, in a car? Like, how does that like usually like pan out for you? Take us through the whole day of you writing.
Okay. So this is gonna sound ridiculous, but I assure people I'm very social. All right. So, but for me, it's like, what people like might drink alcohol or coffee and it's like, they want to go out party. For me, it's like the opposite. If I drink alcohol or caffeine and I just so happen to be inspired, which happens a lot, it's like, all right, I gotta write. I gotta put down these ideas. So for me, it's quite opposite than going out and clubbing. For me, it's like writing. So unless I have something planned, for the most part, I'm either writing, watching something, or playing video games in my spare time. And then a lot of it is what was it? So taking the time to go through like all my notes, already have like a structure. So for me, a lot of it is the cliche of like, hey, just get started, just write. So a lot of it is me going through all my like like rubble of writings where I was like, all right, well, this is where I last left off. This is where I want to go. And just kind of breaking things into I do have like a main outline for like a a story. So like act one, act two, main disaster for act one kind of thing. But sometimes, like I said, I'll see something that's inspiring. I was like, all right, well, how do I incorporate an element? And I feel like it's very, very hard to do. It's very hard to keep somebody completely engaged from beginning to end. Because sometimes, I feel like good stories do have downtime where it's like, well, this isn't the most exciting segment. So I'm constantly trying to find ways through my little notes and stuff. All right, how do I make this scene more spicy, even though it's not meant to be spicy? And sometimes it might come down to like the scene itself might not be exciting, but it might come down to like the character dialogue. And that's where it comes to me, where it's like these interesting quotes that I write down, where it's like, wow, that was like really good. Or that was like, and just like creating the character. So that's where, characters and voicing and dialogue can play a big part for those scenes that may not be as exciting. You need them for your story, but it you can do it in such a way where the reader is still really engaged by like, yo, like I really can keep reading this, like versus, all right, this is kind of like casual banter. I want to get to the exciting stuff. It's constantly me trying to find ways to keep everything going. So a lot of it is just kind of starting from where I left off, going through maybe like if I haven't done a new act, I'll do a new act. If I'm waiting, because a lot of times it's a bit different with comics. You kind of have to wait for the artist too. So it's all right. Like while I'm waiting for the artist to finish this, let me work on the next chapter. Where's the way where I can make this scene more interesting or more telling? So a lot of the day is through that while listening to what you call like well drinking alcohol or caffeine and then listening to anime music. So anime music or I do like some K-pop songs, so just through inspirations. So it's a bit of like an adrenaline rush. It doesn't last the entire day, but it lasts good enough where I'm like, all right, I should take a break. I should like go outside. I should like socialize a little bit before kind of either getting back into it or just feeling like I know I've come to a good place where I feel satisfied for that day or that hour. So I might go for like maybe like 4 or 5 hours where it's like writing, me eating something and going back to write, and then coming to a place where I need to feel like I emptied out my head for like, hey, I did I get what I want to get on paper or through text or on my phone. It's like through the computer. It's like I did. I was like, okay, I can leave it for now. And then the next day I'll come back and it's just a bunch of grammatical errors because I just have to fix through all of that. But the purpose is just like, let me just get it all down. So it's a beautiful cycle. But yeah, yeah,
Oh, that's so really cool. And it's nice to know that, you listen to anime music and K-pop because I think a lot of us have really like Asian culture has been so like very beautiful, like in different aspects. I love K-dramas, so it's like
I love K dramas. Yeah,
I love, like I started watching Squid Game. I know it's not considered a K-drama in many aspects, but I actually just love the thrill, the glory. I saw it on Netflix. So I love, just really looking for the whole sort of suspense mode. The really like, oh my God.
hopefully people don't hate me. Hopefully people don't hate me for this. But this is the thing about I have a YouTube channel, so I made a whole YouTube video about it. Like the thing about Squid Games, and I've learned this with stories too. So the creator of Squid Games actually admitted to this, which is fine. Like Squid Games, at least season one, was very much inspired by the anime. There was an anime that had like the same premise as season one. But I do appreciate the creator of Squid Games, acknowledging like yeah, he watched a lot of anime and was inspired by I think the anime is called kanji. So when I saw like Squid Games and I was like, this looks a lot like some of the scenes were like a lot like kanji, but he, gave credit to like the inspiration he took from kanji. So when you see a lot of Squid Games, I always tell this people like, hey, like with books are like the originators. So like if you want more of that Squid Game content, recommending, reading kanji, the manga or the anime. So a lot of times with these shows, there is something that, was before it. So yeah, no. So I just always thought that was interesting tidbit when people talk about Squid Game. I'm like, it's an amazing show, but definitely people should check out Kaiji too. I feel like they should get a lot of love as well. So
I actually am gonna check it out after this chat because I've actually never heard of kanji, and I am completely the wild.
if you watch it, you'll see for yourself. It's called Kaiji. Yeah. Yeah.
I think I'm gonna actually check it out after this because it actually is starting to pique my interest, and the fact that I hadn't heard about it until you brought it up is like wild to me.
I don't think. I mean, it's not. You get me? Like, I don't think it's popular, right? It was something that even me and my friends talk about, which happens a lot in storytelling. Like before The Lion King, apparently there was another show called I think it was like Simba the Lion or something similar. So it's
Mhm.
like there's a lot of like things that are like that. So it's like but unfortunately, the less popular versions don't get as much love as the main versions, but I still think those less popular versions should be acknowledged and get appreciation. If Citizen Evil, if something bigger comes out that takes a lot from Citizen Evil, I will still hope some people will give my story Citizen Evil a little bit of credit, even if it inspire like the next big thing. So yeah.
Okay. Now I definitely know what to look and I definitely know what I'm gonna wanna continue watching this weekend. So that is actually really funny to know, but oh my gosh, it's really cool that, with your YouTube channel, I actually only was able to explore it briefly. But I actually would love to ask you, how do you, keep up so many things to juggle? Your art, your YouTube channel, your writing, like you've got so many passions. That's incredible. How do you keep the balance?
Uh it's I mean the best way I could say it, and I mean it's not the greatest thing to say, but I feel like it's either you have it or you don't. I feel like if you don't really enjoy doing it, it's eventually gonna fall off. That's how I feel. So some people can kind of build up a habit, but for me, a lot of it really stems from my actual story. And then part of me was like, all right, what's another way I can promote it? And it was through YouTube because I couldn't think of any other immediate means where it's like, I do try, I do attend indie book conventions and promotions, stuff like that. But I was like, well, just looking up ideas online as well in terms of Google, like, hey, what are ways I can promote my book? And I was like, well, YouTube, you could do a YouTube channel and it doesn't have to be about your book because you can only talk so much. So your YouTube channel that can highlight or emphasize your book. And then it's like, my book is anime, Japanese inspired. So I was like, oh, I could just talk about anime, and I watch a lot of anime in my spare time. So that's kind of how the YouTube channel got inspired, just me giving my opinions and takes on the anime, which I think is really just another reflection for just storytelling. When I talk about these shows, it's the same thing with like the regular Netflix shows and the Amazon Prime shows. It was like, hey, you read something or watch something really good, and it's like, hey, like we got to break down that scene. That scene, that fight scene was crazy. That missing scene was amazing. A lot of shows that I also find inspiration from is Black Mirror and then Channel Zero. Channel Zero was recently. I remember looking up. I want to watch more shows like Black Mirror. Is there anything out there? And then, of course, shout out to Reddit. Love Reddit. It's like, oh, check out Channel Zero. And then I was like, oh wow. So literally just videos giving my reviews about these shows. Again, mainly just anime based, but um, it never quite feels too much as long as I kind of have a schedule. And then, sometimes I feel like everybody doesn't have like the best day. So sometimes you may be a little tired or yeah, not really into it, but that's what I mean. Like, I feel like if you're not passionate about it, it will fall off. I find myself when I'm feeling kind of tired or down, like just thinking about my story, and then I was like, okay, like I won't. This is gonna sound crazy, but I was like, okay, I have something to like live for. It's like even if the story doesn't do well, it's like, well, I enjoy writing it, so and like literally as I'm in the gym or wherever, just like thinking about ideas or like you know running with the anime music and like oh like viewing the scenes in my head. So it it's very it's very relaxing for me. Like it keeps me going. So
That's actually really great. And you actually bring up a great point, that it doesn't matter if it's not like a popular story or, if it doesn't reach like a big audience, it's still your passion. You are still having fun writing it. You are still having fun, taking the time to like literally like pour your heart out. You are
mhm.
enjoying what you're doing. And that is
Yeah.
something that I think a lot of us tend to maybe not, I don't want to say forget, but sometimes maybe not always recognize that sometimes our passions, it can be so heart-wrenching to like really not see it like be well received by the public, or when we put it out there, get receive some critiques. But the important thing to remember is that if it's your passion, if you enjoy doing it, that is all that matters. And that actually brings me to ask you my final question, may I ask, what would you say, for anyone who's listening to this podcast right now and they want to become an author, they want to become a drawer, an artist of any kind, but they may feel, like they don't have what it takes, or they may feel a little vulnerable to put themselves out there. What would you say as any suggestions or recommendations you'd have for anyone who wants to be an artist of any kind, whether it's an artist, like a writer, a drawer, anything like that? What would you say? They want to make it work, but they don't really think they have what it takes, or just really, really like they feel like they may not have what it takes.
Yeah, no, I mean, that I could answer pretty easily. With my own series, part of me was like, well, even if this isn't lucrative, I enjoyed the story, and it'll almost be like with my kids, and it's like, yeah, I have a collection of books of a series that I made. Nobody cared to read or nobody could watch, but I enjoyed it. So hopefully you do too. It's more like gladly it's not the case, because what I would recommend was, you have to share it. Even if you don't think it might do well, I feel like sharing it gives you a good gauge of like, all right, well, it could be really either really good or maybe not so good. Whereas like you share it, you'll get a good gauge of like, all right, I think people really enjoy it. And then hopefully it's not the opposite, but then as opposite, there's like, all right, well, maybe there's some things that hey, I can improve, especially if you truly enjoy doing it. It was kind of like just um putting putting yourself out there and giving others the ability to read it, whether it's through, Reddit or I was very big on not as much now, but big on the forums. So forums, online communities where, it's open to like share your like poetry, share your drawing, share your writing. It's meant for indie creators. So definitely join communities like that just to test the water temperature. Like, well, I have this thing. I'm not sure if it's good, but I mainly recommend it for people who, 'cause you'd be surprised if you've been doing it for a long time, you just never shared it with anybody. I think I've been working on my story for like years. Like, I think it was like maybe like 20, I think it was like 2009. Like, I just been working on the story for a really long time. Um, and then actually started doing things maybe like 4 years ago, like actually like creating something. So like if it's been something like that, trust and believe. I just encourage you to share it, and you'll be surprised that people might like it. And I feel like if people like it, that kind of gives you the battery to like, all right, like maybe I should put this out there more. And again, if you get the opposite reaction, which I feel like most cases you won't, especially try sharing it with like your friends or immediate family, and then see what their reaction is. That all right, if you're truly passionate about it, you can like enhance it. Cause the same thing with me, whereas like I learned that okay, like through talking to somebody who is a professional, it's not always the case like with the creative writing class, like, all right, there's a way I could have done this to enhance the scene or enhance the drawing. So if it's not received well, there is a way to get better if it's something that you truly feel like you want to do. But basically share it, and share it with a somebody really close to you, or share it with a online community where it's open to share independent things that isn't always it's not the most popular. It's meant to be like for indie people who, sketches, poetry. But I feel like that's the new generation. That's the generation we're in. Everything's very much online. So sounds cliche, but yeah, like Reddit, yeah, your Reddit people is like, there's a community to just share it, and I feel like 9 times out of 10, they're gonna be supportive. So, I try not to read too much into the toxic stuff, but yeah, because the YouTube comments sometimes are very, very funny, but
Oh,
I'll
I
just
can
leave it at
imagine.
that. But you just can't let that kind of stuff affect you. It's like no matter what, put it out there, and I feel like more times than not, you'll be more surprised at the reception you'll get, especially if you're passionate about it. There's an
Exactly.
audience for it, chances.
Exactly. And the most important thing to remember is, like you just said it, as long as you have somebody, that will read it for you, somebody that you know and trust, they will give you honest feedback, but then also help you improve. It was
Yeah.
definitely, like it's a process to learn. But in all days time, you only get in better, you only improve every single time you continue. And that is the most beautiful thing to like keep in mind, from your passion can inspire so many others, and you never know the impacts that you will continue to make, even people probably even decades or centuries later. And I truly can't thank you enough for being here today, MAS. It was an absolute pleasure to have you. I truly can't thank you enough for being here.
No, I appreciate you having me on. And I will say this for anybody who is starting, like one of the most that was the I can't believe how many people I told about it afterwards. Because I have done a few book conventions. So there was a book convention that I've done my second time around, and I still released volume one, right? So I remember somebody came up to my table and was like, "Oh no, I remember you from last year." Because I'm trying to sell my thing. I was like, "Oh, okay." Like, and she was like, "Yeah, I remember you from last year. I wanted to know if you had more. I wanted to know how the story continued." And I don't know why that just like it hit me. I was like, "Oh wow!" Like, because I do get positive feedback, but trust me, like if you're on the fence about putting something out there and you put it out there and you do find you have reoccurring people that do want to know what happens next, it's this really satisfying feeling of like, oh yeah, I'm not just like wasting my time, but it's one of those things where I am okay wasting my time because I'm passionate about it. But it does feel really good for people who do want to know what happens next and they're reaching out to like, hey, I remember you. I came to your table, I came to your website. I want to know if you have more. So once you kind of have that bug, I feel like it kind of goes uphill from there. So, but I would have never experienced that if I had kept the way I was going prior to that 4-year mark where it was like, yeah, I just have a bunch of ideas on my desktop, haven't like worked with an artist to draw anything, haven't drawn anything myself, haven't like put anything publicly. I may have talked to my friends who said, like, yeah, this is like dope. But it's like you go put something out there, I'm like, eh. So like once I put something out there, that's when I feel like everything started rolling, and that was just a huge. I was like, yeah, people want to know what happens next. So I just encourage new people, like, hey, put your stuff out there, and it will be rewarding. In the long run, I feel like it will be rewarding.
That's absolutely true because you never know, like, the impacts that it can make on yourself, the life-changing opportunity that could be brought about for yourself, for others. And the important thing to always remember is to never give up. You may not have the best day today, working on your passion, but maybe another day could be even better. And that is something that I really hope continues to inspire all of our listeners, who are been with us today for this today's podcast. And like I said, I truly can't thank you enough, MAS, for joining today's episode. And for all of you who have been listening, I truly hope you all have a great day, morning, afternoon, evening, or night, wherever you are in the world. Please stay tuned for next week. And until then, keep on sleuthing.